Hi, I'm Ruth. Welcome back to my art studio, and today I'm going to draw a cockatiel in graphite. Let's go through some of the supplies needed for this cockatiel. Firstly, I'm going to use a Strathmore Bristol Smooth 300 series paper. It has a wonderful smooth surface. I'm using a Faber Castell 9000 series 2B pencil, stays sharp for a long time, and a Tombow Mono Eraser for tiny erasing and highlights, a General's sharpener, just a little manual sharpener, a blending stump, you only need the one here, and then I use a Kneaded eraser, just mostly for the backgrounds at the very end, and I find it handy to use a dusting brush to get rid of particles so that you're not using your fingers. I ground up a couple of HB pencils to create some graphite powder, and I apply this using an eyeshadow blender, and that's all you need to create this project. I've sketched out my outline with a 6H pencil so it's not noticeable and is easy to erase. I like to start with the eye to help the animal come alive because for me it's the most fun part. I'm making sure I've sharpened my pencil before I begin, and I'm applying a reasonable pressure because I know the eye is a very dark value, and if I need to go darker, I know I can press heavier. I'm just using the one Faber Castell 9000 series 2B pencil, and at this point I'm paying very close attention to the Pixabay reference material as I'm working on the highlight in the eye, and I need to preserve some white as I'm not using any additional white pencil or any gouache or jelly roll pens. I've started to build up on the area around the eye. Notice I'm going in the direction of the lines of the eye, such as the eyelashes, and I'm putting detail in right away since I'm working with graphite. The little details make all the difference to the end result and are a surprisingly fun and satisfying part of the process. The Bristol Strathmore smooth paper is perfect for graphite application. This is the series that's 300 and it's inexpensive, acid-free and heavyweight at 100 pounds and 260 grams. You could use any pencil for this. You could use an HB or a 2B. You could use any in the B range. And you can use other papers other than the Bristol Strathmore Smooth. You can use a Stonehenge paper, a Bristol vellum, but it works really well for blending if you use a smooth surface. So I'm continuing to build up all those lines around the outside edge, and I'm really paying close attention to the reference material because I like to use an eraser as little as possible, especially for areas here in the eye which can be quite difficult to erase. So just be careful, watch what you're doing and enjoy the process. In order to blend, I find that the easiest way to do this, and everyone has their preference, but I find the easiest way to do this is to use a blending stump. These are very inexpensive. You can buy them in a variety of different sizes. And notice that I'm using the graphite that is in the center of the eye and applying that. So you'll notice that you really don't need very much, and it spreads very well over a large surface area. So just keep dipping into that eye area and then blending out as you see fit. But all the time I'm blending, I'm making sure that I go in the direction of the feathers and of any lines that are in place. And this is super important, especially if you're working with layers, which we will be doing as we work around the cheek area and the outer areas of the lines. As you get a closer look here, you will see how I'm using the blending stump just like another graphite pencil, and I'm switching between the two so that I can vary the values and also the pressure. Whenever I want finer marks with the Faber Castell pencil, I roll the pencil when I'm just above the paper to get a sharper side of the point. The blenders are very versatile because using the graphite, you can use them to actually draw in the lines. You can use the side of them or the tip of them, just like a pencil. I don't know if you've noticed, but I'm not drawing in any outlines with the pencil. I'm creating the outlines by going right up against the areas. So it really is almost exclusively about values when you work with graphite, juxtaposing light against dark, and is a truly valuable exercise for anyone struggling to understand values, which is a much harder concept than it looks. But by using a white paper, I'm able to utilize all the values available from the lightest lights to the darkest darks. And now I'm beginning the outlines with my work on the beak. And once again, I'll be utilizing the blender, which is becoming an indispensable tool in this drawing. Now at this point, at least 50% of the time, I'm looking at the reference material, and 50% of the time, I'm looking at my sketch. And this is really important. So what this blender is actually doing is it's doing the work of the shading for me so that I don't have to do quite as much work with that Faber Castell pencil. So it saves time and it renders extremely smoothly. So I'm continuing to do some work with the tiny details of the eye and just keep building up layers of darks and layers of values. Now I'm ready to begin the top head feathers of the cockatiel, and a very light touch is appropriate here to give the impression of softness. Here I'm utilizing the Tombow Mono Eraser, which is a wonderful tool for being able to bring back the whites of the paper and also to reveal highlights. I used this tool extensively in this piece, and I hope you'll consider getting one if you're inspired to do graphite drawings. I'm also using the dusting brush so that I'm not using my fingers, and notice how far back I'm holding my pencil. This helps to provide not only the light pressure, but to keep everything really loose and fine, especially if you're trying to achieve feathered edges in your mark making. There are lots of layers in the beak area. It's one of the darkest values, and I'm making sure I leave one area of it whiter, meaning untouched, so that it creates the illusion of a curve. I'm using a light flicking action for the top feathers. You can tackle whichever part of the bird you like when you're using graphite. you'll see that I've been using a sheet of paper. It's just computer paper for protecting my hands at all time, and it does a great job of preventing smears. You can use glassine or you can use a piece of sheet protector. Just don't use a tissue or a paper towel, as this will encourage the graphite to move around and you'll end up blending without even knowing it. So just keep paying close attention to the reference, keep those strokes light and even, and watch your values, although you can add them later or at any time because it is graphite. I love that you can keep refining with graphite, and for the most part you can add and also take away. The Faber Castell pencil is great, and for the whole exercise of over 2 hours, maybe even 2.5 hours, I only needed to sharpen it once. Faber Castell pencils have a very sturdy lead, and this is especially true with their coloured pencils as well. I'm really concentrating on the details in the cockatiel's face because I want the details to be here. The face is really the focal point and should be the sharpest area with as much depth and clarity as possible, so every line and mark you make will be much more noticeable here. The majority of the graphite work is starting to reach completion, and now it's a matter of starting to pay attention to the darkest darks and check the values. Beginners usually feel that they are finished before they're actually finished. Sometimes a few hours away from your work is necessary for a fresh evaluation. Most times the real issue is there's just not enough contrast. So remember, don't call your work done before it's time. And now I'm going to begin using the graphite powder. And this part is fun because with this powder I can cover a very large surface area very quickly. I can still see the pencil strokes underneath or not, depending if I want to keep those marks. Those small particles you see can be blended entirely. And notice I can use different motions. I can change from a circular motion to a back and forth motion, but whichever I use, the graphite powder blends really smoothly and evenly. Remember, this is just the powder that I made from sanding an HB pencil. You can also see how little you need to use and how long it's going to last. Layering is easy here, as you just apply more if you need more. I can use the thin side or the flat side depending on the line I want to create, and so it's perfect for a nice soft finish to the breast of the cockatiel. Finally, I'm going to create some really fine lines which are placed on top of the graphite powder and also on the areas I blended with the blending stump. These crisp lines with a sharpened pencil create depth and believability and make all the difference to your finished piece. So using the mono eraser, I can remove parts of the graphite to reveal the white paper underneath and to bring out some white feathers and break up some of the flatness in that frontal area. I can also use this eraser to soften some of the fine lines that might now appear a little bit too dark. Spending time on these refinements and not rushing ahead to finish are so important in this process. I did come back at a later date and added a few more highlights to the front area to add some little white feathers. I hope you've enjoyed this video and learned some new tips and techniques, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.